Okay, so in the last one, we set up our carousel. So the slider, the bootstrap slider, bootstrap carousel, those are kind of interchangeable. We set it up so we can actually have images and some text and all this stuff and rotate through. We set this up in the last one. So now in this one, we want to actually create a model where we can store this information on our database and then retrieve it at any given interval based on what the parameters are that we set for that given message. Now, just like the marketing message, the top message up top, it will change based on the time and all that stuff. So we're going to do something very similar. So let's go into Sublime Text, and in your marketing models.py, go ahead and open this up. And marketing message, I'm going to actually copy this exactly and go down below. We're going to paste this in, and I'm just going to call it slider. I'm no longer going to call it marketing message. I'll just call it slider. There's probably not going to be another model named slider, so it works. And now we'll just do text instead of marketing message, and we're going to change this to being null equals to true and blank equals to true, because again, it's not a message anymore. It's going to be mostly an image, so we'll do text, and let's also do header text. All right, so like that would take place of this. One would be here, one would be here. And at some point, these might be HTML ready or something like that. That's something we can worry about later. And notice the marketing manager is going to be the same, right? It's going to be the same as the one we've done before because it's going to function basically the same. So active is going to be the same, featured, all that stuff will be the same, which is nice. Granted, the start date and end date and all that stuff might be a little different, but all the other fields about it are the same. And there's one other field that we're going to need, which is an image field. So we'll do image equals to models.file field, and we'll do upload to, and you can set a location here. So let's say, for instance, we wanted to put it under images/marketing/slider. This will upload to that directory based on where we set our, if we look in our settings.py and we scroll down media, so it's going to upload into media, and then it's going to go to the directory that we set in our model here. Right? So if that directory does not exist, it will actually create it too, which is nice. Now, before we actually get into this, I wanted to mention a few things about upload to. First of all, we can create a function called, let's say, for instance, slider upload, and it will take in the instance and file name. So we can have it take in these two things, and we can have it return something different. So let's say, for instance, I wanted it to be a little bit smarter. So let's do %s, and then images, and then %s again. We could do %, like, let's say, for instance, we wanted the header text to be the actual directory where it would be, or we could do the start date or something like that. But I'm just going to leave it as images. And then I will do the file name also. All right, I'm basically going to have it as the same thing as what we have down here. And then I'll do slider. And then right here will be file name. Okay, so this would allow me to actually upload directly to this location. So then all I would do here is put a function here called slider upload. So instance would allow me to put, let's say, for instance, I wanted slider and I wanted an instance ID here. I could do instance.id, and then that would put a directory for instance ID. You could also do it for, let's say, for instance, active or some of these other things. More than likely, you would do it for a user, right? So you'd probably have an instance user if it was actually associated, which we don't have it associated, but if you did, that's how you would do it, right? So like in models, how we have this user right here, we would come back, and models for orders, that is, we would come back and we'd have an instance user. But I'm going to leave that out. I just wanted to make note of it so you guys can be a little creative about how you upload your stuff. And also notice that it does not have a slash at the beginning, right? But these directories will be created based on how we do it, and it's going to upload again to our media root. So wherever we set this media file, that's where it's going to actually upload to. Okay, cool. So now that we have that out of the way, let's actually talk about the file field itself. Now, the file field will accept any type of file. So if we go in here, we see this is the Django documentation for file field. Oops, that's file path, but file field is right here. And we can actually upload things here, and we can do all types of stuff with any given file. It doesn't have to be an image, but it will work as for any type of file, and there's all these other methods that we can use, like URL, read over to get the relative path, so we can actually get the URL of where it is, and the method of the under storage class, but we don't have to get into that. But if we scroll down a little bit, and we check out image field, here's one that we might want to use. Image field is awesome because it validates whether or not it's an image, and then it can give a width and a height of the model instance that's saved, which I'm going to ignore. But the downside to this is it requires the Pillow library, and this library is not that easy to actually install. There are some things that actually work, so if you want to use the image field, go ahead and pause the video now and go to our guide on our GitHub, so github.com/codingforentrepreneurs/guides, and look for the Django image field and Pillow guide. And you'll see some guide that will walk you through actually installing Pillow to use the image field. So you could actually change this to being image field, which is actually what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be using image field because I want to have the advantages of making sure that this is an image, especially since that we are going to be using this for other projects, or people might be using this anyway. So if that doesn't work, I will comment out the file field one, so you guys will be able to do that as well if you wanted to change it to file field. All right, so now if I have image field, I actually have to add in Pillow. So I would do pip install Pillow. My Pillow is already installed, right? So that would be the installation guide. So now that I have Pillow installed, I can go ahead and use this as a new class that we're going to be using. So now I'm going to cancel out, and I'll do Python manage.py, schema migration, and we'll do marketing -- auto, and then Python manage.py, migrate marketing. All right, and we'll run the server again. Okay, so now that we have this all set up, I'm going to add it into the admin as well. So import slider, and then class slider admin, admin.modeladmin, and class meta. Actually, we could do almost the exact same thing as before. I'm going to just copy these. And I'll do model equals to slider. And of course, you have to actually enter it in. So site.register, slider, and slider admin. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and check this out in the admin. Make sure our server is running, and it is. Refresh. And I'll go into the admin. And we've got sliders here. So if I add a slider image, notice it's the only thing that is done by default. So I'm just going to go onto the desktop, and I have a screenshot of swiftforentrepreneurs.com as it stands right now, or excuse me, launchwithcode.com as it stands right now. So I uploaded it, and I'll hit save and continue editing. Slider has no attribute message. So this is like, okay, well, what happened? Well, let's think about this. I know what it is already, and you might be able to guess too. We copied our slider class from the marketing message class. So if we copied it, we might have made some error somewhere in that copying. So right off the bat, I know that might be the possible error. And then, of course, it does say the exception location. It says models.py in Unicode line 71. So we'll look for that. Go into models.py, Unicode line 71, right here, self message. Of course, we don't actually have the message itself. So instead, I'm just going to do self.id and turn that into a string. And then I might have to refresh and continue the submission. Okay, great. So my image was uploaded, and I have an image now that's actually in there, of course, and I'm going to download or save one of these two. Save this one right here. I'm going to save this onto my desktop, so now I can actually upload this in as well. So saved it, it downloaded, and I'm going to save and add another. Go into the desktop again, and we're going to grab that picture there. All right, so some text, and let's say it's active and featured. And we will save and go to slider 1 and say it's active and featured. Save that as well. All right, cool. So now we've got a couple sliders with images on them, and we'll actually be able to work with these here. So now that we've got that, let's go into our view for the home page. I'm going to close out a lot of this stuff because I don't know where it all is. So the home page, I believe, was on products, because I think that's where we put it. And yes, we did. We put it right there. And now I'll just do sliders equals to slider.objects.all. Now right off the bat, you might be like, hey, we didn't import slider, so we have to import it. Marketing models, we already have done that, so let's import slider. All right, so now we have to add slider into our context. So let's make our context a couple lines now. And I'll do sliders, slider. Right, so this variable is going to be related to that. This is going to be our context variable. So in our template, we can actually use it. So now on our template for home, let's go ahead and open that up. And in here, we would now say in our Jumbotron, we would say if sliders. So if there's any sliders, then we'll make sure that that shows up. And if. Cool. So now that we've got that, let's go ahead and actually call these sliders. And what I'm going to do here is I have to do a for loop. I have to go through each slider. So let's actually look at the wrapper for the sliders. Now we've got a couple in here. So there's two. These are the actual sliders themselves. And then we have indicators right here. So that means we're going to have two for loops to actually show, what's going on with our sliders. So I'm going to add it after the sliders that we've already have, just so we still have it working to some degree. And I'll do for slider in sliders in for, and go ahead and copy this one div class of item right here. Paste that in. Okay. And now, instead of having hello there and hello world, we're going to do if slider.header text and if, and then this context would be here. So if there's any slider header text, we'll put that in. And then if there's any slider text, we'll put that in. So we just copied and pasted a few things here. All right, and then let's put slider text here. These look like rogue little curly brackets, so let's get rid of those. All right, so we have our two ifs statements here. Now, I don't know, let's actually check to make sure that header text is the right field name that we called it in our model. So open up your model for marketing. Double-clicking makes it sure that it goes into a new tab. So we scroll down, and it is header text and then regular text. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that that was right. And then this is going to be our actual image, right? So how we're actually going to get that. So what we have to do is make sure that this right here is coming from our image. Now, the first thing you might just be like, oh, okay, cool. Well, then I'll just go and do slider.image, because that should load it, right? Well, no, it's going to load only part of the link. And that's because this is going to give us an image relative to the media upload. So let's actually look at it. So if we go into Chrome and then to our home page, and I go over one, you'll see that the image is broken. So we could do here, we could go capitalized media URL. And then we go back and refresh in here and go boom, boom. There we go. So now the image is showing up. That's great. But that's probably not going to be the best method, actually. We would probably want to say get image URL. So that means we want to make a function called get image URL. So let's go back into our model. And this function is going to be called an instance method. So we're going to put it inside of the class because it's going to be working on the instance itself. So we define get image URL self. And we're going to return, well, what do we return? So for now, I'm just going to put a slash and %s. So we definitely want to get the image. So %self.image. Right, so we definitely want to have that there. Now we also want to have the media URL here, or whatever that is. So we have to import settings from django.conf, import settings, all lowercase. Scroll down to the bottom, and it'll be settings.media URL. And this is going to be another %s, so for string substitution, of course. And now this should give us the image URL. So let's actually print, or let's actually check it out. Go into our project. We'll refresh in here, go over a couple, and there we go. Our image is coming through. And so let's explain this again. The reason we're doing something like this is because then it's just one little template tag, and most of the logic is back into our Python code. So like if you had a designer looking at this, slider.getImageURL makes a lot more sense than media URL all this stuff, right? It's two things. It's not really that complicated, but anything to make it easier on them is ideal. So now we've got this image URL, perfect. So that means that we've got this image that's showing up, and notice there's only 3 of them coming through, even though we have more than 3. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these right here. I do want to make note of this active one, so this active class here. So let's cut this, and for now I'm just going to say if for loop first, then we'll say active and if. All right, so this is counting the for loop. That's because of this. And if it's the first one, it will add active in. Great. Okay, so now we also need to update the carousel indicators. So I'll just do a for loop and end for. And then again, we will add this in. So copying this, paste it here. And now we'll just say class equals to double quotes active. All right, let's get rid of this list element here. And since it's going through a for loop, just hit enter here so we have a little bit more space. Since it's going to a for loop, we can just change this to being for loop.counter. All right, so that's a template tag to allow us to get the numbers that are going through the for loop. And now we have all the slider stuff working too. So if I refresh it here, I have 2 sliders showing up as should be, right? But actually, let's make sure they're both active and they're both featured, which perhaps that's not the most ideal thing. Perhaps we only want one to be featured. So really, we could probably change how the one is featured, but this is going to be kind of take some thinking. Do we want the featured ones to be the only ones that are displayed and then the ordering doesn't really matter? Or do we want the ordering to really matter, right? So do we want that first slider to be something very specific, or do we want it to be something different? So if you want it to be something very specific, then we could say ordering equals to models.integer field max length, or let's do a default of 0. We have to have a default or make it null, and I'm going to make it default of 0, and then I'm going to make that the first thing, ordering, in our ordering down here, or let's just call it order, not to confuse anything. So now we've got our default of 0, so now we can actually change the order of how they're going to be displayed. So let's try that out. First, I have to do the schema migration in our server. So scroll up or press up a couple times and you'll get to our last one. All right, so let's run the server. And let's go into our admin. So slider 1, let's change slider 1 to position 2. Save and continue. And slider 2 will change to position 1. Save and continue. And now let's refresh in here. And we now see that this is coming through first. This is coming through second. So if we add another one, I'm going to add another one. So save and continue. I'm going to use probably the same image. So let's just go to the desktop. And actually, I'll use the open e-commerce image. Let's just do that, even though it's small. Well, actually, no, it's too small. So we use this image here again. And I'll say 1. And this is first image. Some text. And, of course, active and featured. And then we'll just save it. Go back, do a refresh. It says some text and then first image. So let's see why. We've got order 2, order 1, and order 1. So we have some conflicts here. So perhaps we'd want to see the actual ordering inside of the admin too. Otherwise, we will definitely see those conflicts. So let's open up the admin. And next to Unicode, we will put order. Save that. Make sure that there's a comma after it. Okay, good. Now we see ordering. Great. So now it has an ordering. Well, what if we wanted to actually edit it? Edit the ordering in the admin instead of going through each slider? Well, we can do that. We'll do list display, or sorry, list editable equals to order. And we refresh in here. Notice that we now have save on this and we can change our orders, which is great. And another thing that we might want to do is change our Unicode to being the actual image itself. So now self.image is going to be the Unicode string. So we can see that, hey, check that out. Now we see that there's images and this is going to show us the actual, at least the title of the image and do all this stuff here. All right, so that is pretty much it as far as how our slider is going to work on the basic level. Of course, we still have to set it up where we have our featured ones being shown and also the right time and not how they currently are. So that's something that we'll do in the next one.